It started with Rain, a tired waitress, a freezing boy outside her diner. No cameras, no audience, just one moment of quiet kindness. She gave him a grilled cheese and a warm smile. She didn't ask his name. She didn't know who was watching. Across the street, inside a silent black Bentley, a billionaire father saw something he couldn't ignore. That night, everything changed. An envelope, a job offer, a leap from greasy aprons to glass towers. But power comes at a price. And when the same system that gave her a seat at the table tried to push her back out, she didn't beg. She fought. Because Elena Carter was never just a waitress, and this is not just a story about money. It's about choices, loyalty, revenge, and what happens when the woman no one saw coming becomes the one they can't stop. The black waitress had spent years working double shifts at a small diner, earning just enough to get by. But she never let exhaustion dull her kindness. So when she saw a frail boy in a wheelchair shivering in the rain outside, she didn't hesitate. She brought him inside, gave him food, and made him feel safe. Across the street, a billionaire was watching their every move. That billionaire was the boy's father, and her simple act of kindness was about to open doors she never imagined possible. Rain poured down in relentless sheets, drumming against the pavement of Lexington Avenue, turning the cracked sidewalk into a slick, uneven mess. Streetlights flickered, their dim glow barely illuminating the worn-down buildings lining the street. It was late, past 11 p.m., and the diner was supposed to be closing. But Elena Carter had never been the type to turn someone away. Not when they needed help. Not when the world had already done enough to kick them down. She was wiping down the counter, her chestnut brown skin damp with sweat after a grueling 12-hour shift, when she noticed a small figure outside. A boy hunched over in a battered wheelchair. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, a tattered coat barely shielding him from the cold. He sat just beneath the neon Lexington Diner sign, hands clutching a frayed blanket that did little to keep out the chill. Elena frowned, set her rag down, and pushed open the diner door. The wind hit her like a wave. "Hey, hey, sweetie," she called gently, crouching beside him. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The boy flinched at first, then looked up. His wide blue eyes were uncertain, searching. "I'm waiting for my dad," he mumbled, his voice barely audible over the rain. Elena glanced up and down the street. Nothing. Just the dim glow of a pawn shop's cash for gold sign flickering across the road, and the soft hiss of tires on wet asphalt. "Where is he?" she asked, concern creeping into her voice. The boy shrugged, pulling the blanket tighter around himself. Elena exhaled and bit her lip. She'd seen too many nights like this, too many kids left waiting for someone who wasn't coming. "Well, you can't stay out here." "Not in this mess," she said, offering a warm smile. "Come inside with me, Okwell, okay? It's warm, and I've got something special for you." The boy hesitated, then slowly nodded. When the nights were too long and the world felt too cruel, "This one's on me," Elena said softly, tucking a napkin into Ethan's lap. Ethan's blue eyes widened as he took his first bite, the grilled cheese stretching in long, gooey strings. "This is the best thing I've ever had," he murmured, his voice laced with something close to wonder. Elena chuckled, watching him devour the sandwich. "Good food makes everything better," she said lightly. But inside of a familiar ache stirred, the kind that came from seeing someone so young, so small, already carrying the weight of the world. What she didn't know was that someone was watching. Across the street, a sleek black Bentley sat idle in the shadows, its tinted windows catching the diner's neon glow. Inside, Victor Stone sat in silence, his sharp gray eyes locked onto the scene unfolding before him. At 46, Victor was a man who had built his empire on control, precision, and ruthlessness. Stone Innovations was the beating heart of Baltimore's tech industry, a billion-dollar machine that ran on efficiency, not sentiment. And Victor, its CEO, had spent years ensuring nothing, no person, no emotion, no weakness, interfere with that. Yet here he was, watching, listening, thinking. Ethan was his son, and that woman, that black waitress in a cheap apron in a rundown diner, was feeding his son, for free. Victor's jaw tightened. He had been delayed, caught in an emergency call with investors in Japan. He told Ethan to wait by the diner. Just for a few minutes, he hadn't expected this. He reached for his phone, dialing fast. Nora, he said the moment his assistant picked up. Get down to Lexington Diner. No suits, no heels. I need you there in 20 minutes. There was a pause. Sir? His grip on the phone tightened. Find out everything you can about the woman who just fed my son. Then he hung up. Inside the diner, Ethan was laughing for the first time all night, swinging his legs beneath the table, soup stains on his chin. Elena wiped it away with a napkin, shaking her head. Messy eater, huh? Across the street, Victor kept watching, his expression unreadable, his mind already working, already calculating, because he didn't believe in kindness. He believed in debts. And whether she realized it or not, Elena Carter had just put him in hers. Elena wiped her hands on her apron and glanced toward the diner window. The rain kept falling, streaking uneven trails across the glass. Ethan was finishing the last bite of his sandwich. His fingers were warm now, no longer trembling. The tight, guarded look had softened on his face. One no child should have to wear. She felt a quiet swell of satisfaction. One more person, one more moment of kindness. That was enough. Then the door swung open. The cold air rushed in first. Then a woman stepped inside. Jeans, hoodie, blonde hair tucked beneath a faded Orioles cap. She didn't fit the place, not because of what she wore, but because of the way she moved. Sharp, calculated, assessing everything in a single glance. Elena had worked in this business long enough to recognize someone who wasn't here for the coffee. The woman's gaze found Ethan immediately. Her face softened, and she crouched beside him. Hey, champ, time to go, she said lightly, though something in her tone was too smooth, too rehearsed. Ethan frowned, wiping his mouth with the napkin Elena had given him. But I haven't finished my milk. The woman, Nora, though Elena didn't know that yet, tilted her head and smiled with practiced ease. You can take it with you. Your ride's waiting. Elena's instincts flared. She had seen too many people dismissed, erased, shuffled off without a second thought. Too many moments where someone like her wasn't expected to ask questions. But she always did. She folded her arms and studied the woman carefully. You know him? The woman's smile didn't falter, but her posture shifted, a subtle tightening of the shoulders, the barest flicker of hesitation. Yeah, she said smoothly. I'm his aunt. Elena didn't blink. She turned to Ethan. That true, sweetheart? Ethan hesitated, just a second too long. Nora's jaw twitched. Elena had grown up in a world where hesitation meant everything, where fear had a look and power moved quietly, like smoke in the dark. She knew in her bones this woman wasn't Ethan's aunt. She crouched beside him, meeting his uncertain eyes. You good, baby? She asked, voice soft now, like a shield. You want to go with her? Ethan looked between them. His small fingers clenched the napkin, tiny knuckles going white. She's here for my dad, he mumbled. I guess I have to. Elena didn't move. Every instinct in her screamed push, ask more, make sure. But she'd been here before. A black woman pressing too hard, asking too many questions, getting the wrong kind of attention. Still, she wouldn't send him away empty-handed. She walked to the counter, grabbed a chocolate chip cookie wrapped in wax paper, and slid it into Ethan's hand. For the road, she said. His fingers curled around it. He grinned, bright, unguarded. Thanks, Elena. You're the best. Elena forced a smile, but something in her chest pulled tight. She watched as Nora guided Ethan toward the door, tension thick enough to cut between them. Then just before stepping into the rain, Nora glanced back. She didn't say a word. She just looked. Elena knew that look. A warning. Across the street, the Bentley's headlights flashed. Nora approached. The rear door swung open before she could knock. Victor Stone stepped out, framed by the diner's harsh neon glow. Broad, imposing, silent. The moment Ethan was buckled in the back seat, Victor turned to Nora. Well? Nora exhaled, pushing back her hood. She's sharp, she admitted. Didn't buy the aunt story. Almost called me out. Victor's expression didn't change, but she let him go. She didn't have a choice, Nora said, pointed. You know how it is. A black woman making a scene? She'd be the one in trouble, not me. Victor's jaw worked, tight. He said nothing. Nora folded her arms. She's not like the others. He already knew that. He'd seen it from the moment Elena had stepped into the rain without hesitation. The way she'd spoken to Ethan, like he mattered, like he wasn't an inconvenience. Victor had watched people bend, flatter, manipulate for his money. But Elena hadn't even known who he was, and she had helped anyway. That made her dangerous. He opened the car door, slid inside. His voice was low. I want everything on her. Name, address, background. He fastened his seatbelt, staring ahead. I want it on my desk by morning. Nora hesitated, just a beat too long. Sir, by morning, she exhaled. Understood. The Bentley pulled away from the curb, the diner shrinking in the rear view. But Victor wasn't thinking about the city lights or the traffic ahead. He was thinking about Elena Carter and the debt he owed her. Elena's sneakers were soaked by the time she got home. Rain clung to her jeans and the cold had sunk into her bones. The night's tips weighed light in her pocket, barely enough for rent. Groceries would be a stretch. But Ethan's grin stayed with her. Still, unease crept beneath her skin. She'd seen that kind of smile before, the polished, practiced kind. She'd seen that flicker of fear in a kid's eyes. That wasn't just any stranger picking him up. That was someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She climbed the stairs to her one-bedroom apartment on West Fayette Street, where the heat barely worked and the walls were thin enough to hear her neighbor's teeth 3 doors down. As soon as she shut the door behind her, she leaned against it, rubbing a hand over her face. She had learned a long time ago not to get involved in things that weren't her business. But this felt different. This felt wrong. Then, a knock. Elena stiffened. No one came by at this hour. She peered through the peephole. A man stood outside, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black coat that looked like it cost more than her entire rent. His face was sharp, gray eyes cold and assessing, like he had already taken her apart in his mind before she even opened the door. She didn't open it. Who is it? A pause, then a voice, deep, controlled, too controlled. Victor Stone. The name meant nothing to her. What do you want? She asked, hand firm on the lock. Another pause. To talk. Elena's gut screamed, hell no. But curiosity won. Slowly she unlatched the door, opened it just enough to see his face clearly. He didn't belong in this building, not in this part of the city, not in her world. I don't know you, she said flatly. His expression didn't change. No, but you know my son. Elena's pulse skipped. She studied him now, really studied. The way he filled the tiny doorway without even trying, the way his coat was still damp from the rain, but his shoes were spotless. This was money, power, the kind that could break people without ever lifting a hand. Her grip tightened on the doorframe. Ethan, she said slowly. You're his father? He gave the barest nod. I was across the street last night. The chill that had settled in her bones turned sharp. You were watching. I was. Elena exhaled through her nose, steadying herself. So what? You here to complain that I fed your kid? Victor's gaze flickered, unreadable. No. I'm here because I don't believe in charity, but I do believe in paying debts. Without waiting for her response, he pulled an envelope from his coat and placed it carefully on her rickety kitchen table. Elena didn't move. She glanced at the envelope. Thick, heavy paper. Expensive. The kind of envelope that meant whatever was inside wasn't small. She swallowed. What is that? A job offer. Elena blinked up at him, thrown. A what? Victor tilted his head slightly, the tiniest signal of how much patience he was willing to grant her. A job at HT Dynamics, 6 figures, benefits, the works. Elena let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. You think I want to work for some rich white man who thinks handing out a check makes us even? Victor didn't flinch. I don't think you want charity, Elena. That's why I'm not offering it. Her name in his mouth made something twist low in her chest. She folded her arms. You don't even know me. I know enough. His voice was steady, unshakable, like a man who never asked, only decided. I know you gave my son food without expecting anything. I know you didn't treat him like an inconvenience. I know that's rare. Elena swallowed hard, trying to ignore the way his words knocked something loose in her ribs. She glanced again at the envelope. at the ridiculous weight of it sitting there like it could crush her if she let it. And what exactly would I be doing at HT Dynamics? Making coffee? For the first time, something flickered across Victor's face, something almost like amusement. It was gone in a blink. No, you'd be working directly with me, handling negotiations, public relations. You're good with people. I need someone like that. Elena snorted. You don't need me. You've got a company full of Ivy League grads who'd slit each other's throats for a job like that. Victor's expression shifted just slightly. Exactly why I don't trust them. Silence stretched between them, heavy, waiting. Elena could feel the weight of his offer pressing against her, curling around the edges of her pride, her exhaustion, her stubborn refusal to be bought. But 6 figures. 6 figures meant no more late rent, no more living paycheck to paycheck, no more nights stretching her last $20. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Never owe these people anything, baby. They don't give without taking. Elena's jaw clenched. Why me? Victor held her gaze, and for the first time, something behind his eyes flickered. Because you saw my son. His voice was lower now, like it almost cost him something to say. Not my money, not my name. You saw him. Elena's throat tightened. She looked at the envelope one last time, then slowly she picked it up. I'll think about it, she murmured. Victor studied her a long moment, then gave a curt nod. Good. And without another word, he turned and left. Elena stood there long after the door shut, the envelope heavy in her hands. Because deep down, she already knew. She wasn't just thinking about it. She was going to say yes. The first day at HT Dynamics felt like stepping into another world. A world where everything gleamed too bright, where money smelled like freshly polished marble, and the air buzzed thick with power. Elena walked into the towering glass building in a department store blazer and thrifted heels, feeling every pair of eyes snap toward her the moment she crossed the lobby. It wasn't curiosity, it wasn't welcome. It was evaluation, calculation, judgment. She kept her head high, shoulders squared. Elena gently took hold of the wheelchair's handles and pushed him inside. The warmth of the diner hit them instantly, the scent of buttered toast and burnt coffee wrapping around them like a blanket. She led him to a booth near the radiator, draping a fresh towel over his shoulders before crouching to meet his eyes. I'm Elena, she said, flashing another grin. What's your name, sweetheart? The boy sniffled, his fingers curling around the edge of the blanket. Ethan, Elena nodded. That's a strong name. You hungry? He nodded again hesitantly. Elena didn't wait for a reply. She was already moving toward the kitchen, pulling out a fresh loaf of sourdough and slicing it with practiced ease. A few minutes later, she set a steaming plate in front of him, a golden crisp grilled cheese sandwich and a bowl of tomato soup on the side, her go-to comfort meal. The one her grandmother used to make. She'd worked in places where people underestimated her before. She knew how to hold her ground. Victor was waiting in his office, a sprawling, sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. His desk was too pristine, the kind of clean that said, this is for show, not for work. He didn't look up when she walked in, just gestured toward the chair across from him. You're late. Elena arched a brow as she sat. By 2 minutes. Victor finally looked at her, gray eyes sharp enough to cut. That's 2 minutes I don't get back. Elena exhaled, shaking her head. She'd been here for 5 seconds, and he was already starting. Look, you want me here or not? He leaned back, studying her. That remains to be seen. Before she could fire back, the glass door opened and a woman stepped in. Tablet in hand, expression unreadable. Lena. Elena didn't miss the way her eyes swept over her, head to toe like she was measuring how far below standard she fell. Spoiler alert, she'd already decided Elena didn't belong. Miss Carter, Lena said smoothly, welcome to Stone Innovations. Elena met her gaze head-on, lips curling into a slow, pointed smile. Oh, we're doing last names? All right. Good to see you again, Ms. Winters. Something flickered in Lena's eyes just for a second before she turned back to Victor. I prepared the reports for the upcoming negotiations with the Orion Group. She handed him the tablet, barely sparing Elena another glance. Would you like me to brief her on company protocols? Victor didn't even look up. No, I will. Elena wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a warning. Lena nodded but paused just slightly at the door. She glanced back one more time. "Good luck," she said quietly. It didn't sound like encouragement. It sounded like a warning. Before Elena could ask what the hell that meant, Victor was already diving in. No small talk, no settling in. He pulled up a file, sliding it across the table. "Orion Group," he said. "They want to push through a contract that'll cut labor costs by outsourcing jobs overseas." He didn't sugarcoat it. That means layoffs. Thousands. Elena skimmed the file, her stomach turning. "And you want me to what? Convince them not to?" Victor's gaze didn't waver. "I want you to do what you do best." Elena sat back, crossing her arms. "So let me get this straight. You brought me in because you think I can, what, charm my way into getting these billionaires to grow a conscience?" "No," Victor didn't blink. "I brought you in because I think you understand something they don't." She narrowed her eyes. "And what's that?" He leaned forward slightly. "That people who have nothing to lose fight the hardest." The words hit something deep in her ribs, something unspoken but true. She stared at him for a long moment, then exhaled, shaking her head. "You talk in riddles a lot for someone who runs a tech empire." For the first time, the corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile, but not quite. And just like that, the moment passed. "Meeting's at noon," he said, standing. "Try not to be late." Elena rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She had a job to do. The conference room was colder than the rest of the building. All steel and glass, designed to make people uncomfortable. Elena sat beside Victor at the long mahogany table, facing three men in tailored suits, each one radiating the kind of confidence that came from knowing they could buy and sell entire lives with a single stroke of a pen. At the center, James Harrington, 60, white hair slicked back, arrogance like it was inherited. He barely looked at her. Elena had dealt with men like him before, the ones who only saw value in people who looked like them. She didn't let it show. Victor opened the conversation direct as ever. "You want to move production to Taiwan. You say it'll save costs, increase efficiency." He paused. "I say it'll destroy a workforce that's built this company's infrastructure for over a decade." Harrington gave a slow, thin-lipped smile, the kind that didn't touch his eyes. "You misunderstand, Victor. It's not personal. It's just business." Elena's fingers curled under the table. Not personal. She'd heard that before. When her landlord raised the rent overnight because developers wanted to revitalize the neighborhood. When her mom lost her job at the textile plant to cheaper labor overseas. When companies like this shut down communities and called it strategy. She smiled, but there was steel in it. "Funny," she said, tilting her head. "It's always just business, until it's your job on the line." Harrington's eyes snapped to her for the first time. Victor didn't interrupt. He just watched. Harrington exhaled sharply through his nose. "And you are?" "Elena Carter, Stone Innovations." He gave her a once-over. She saw the exact moment he dismissed her. She didn't care. She'd been underestimated before. Harrington leaned back in his chair, waving a hand. "Look, sweetheart, I get it. You think we're the villains here, but this is about numbers. What makes the most sense?" "Sweetheart." Lena's jaw locked. She leaned forward, matching his posture. "All right," she said coolly. "Let's talk numbers." She slid a folder across the table. "This is a breakdown of what happens when you offshore production. Sure, you cut costs at first, but in 3 years, when labor demands rise, your new hub gets expensive. You'll spend millions restructuring, rehiring, dealing with PR disasters when the headlines read, 'M. Gavin and workers betrayed for profit.'" She tapped the document. "That's not a guess, that's market analysis." Harrington glanced at the file, didn't touch it. Elena didn't flinch. "You can make the smart choice now," she said, voice calm, deadly, "or explain to your investors why your short-term gains just cost them their long-term returns." Silence. Then finally Harrington exhaled, picked up the paper, and scanned it. Victor didn't smile, but Elena felt the shift. She'd just changed the game. Harrington set the document down, his expression unreadable. "We'll revisit the proposal." Victor nodded. "See that you do." The meeting ended shortly after. As Harrington and his team left, Elena felt the weight of Victor's gaze. She turned to him. "Well?" He studied her for a long moment. "I knew I hired you for a reason, Elena smirked. Damn right you did. And for the first time since walking into Stone Innovations, she felt like she belonged. 2 months in, Elena had found her rhythm, or at least she thought she had. She'd learned how to navigate the halls of power, how to stand her ground in a world that barely acknowledged her existence. She'd faced down James Harrington, and won. She'd proven to Victor and to herself that she wasn't a pet project. She was there because she belonged. But victories at the top never lasted long. Because now the company was in trouble. Elena was in trouble. Someone had just set her up to take the fall. She had just come back from a client meeting when Lena caught her in the hallway. We have a problem, Lena said, her tone sharp and urgent. Elena frowned. Define problem. Lena didn't answer. She just handed Elena a printed email. Elena's stomach dropped the second she saw the contents. It was a company report, classified financial data. It had been leaked to the press. And the forwarding email, it had her name on it. The words blurred. The air shifted, thick, heavy. She forced herself to breathe. This isn't mine. I know, Lena said, but someone wants it to be. Elena's pulse throbbed in her ears. She had seen how fast situations like this could spiral out of control. A black woman in a powerful white space didn't get the benefit of the doubt. She didn't get to be innocent until proven guilty. She was guilty the second they said she was. She gripped the paper, scanning it again. Who else has seen this? Victor, Lena said quietly. And the board. Elena's breath hitched. The board. She had barely clawed her way into this company, and now they were about to rip her out. Victor's office felt colder than usual. Or maybe it was just the way he was looking at her. His hands were clasped on the desk, expression unreadable. But his eyes, those sharp gray eyes, were studying her, weighing her. Elena felt something clench in her chest. Tell me I wasn't wrong, he said, low and controlled. Elena slammed the printed email onto his desk. This isn't me. Victor didn't look at the paper. He didn't need to. I want to believe that, he said, his voice steady. But this is a serious leak, Elena. Millions in exposure, stock drops, federal investigations. You understand how bad this is. Elena leaned forward, planting her hands on his desk. I understand perfectly. I also understand that whoever did this knows exactly what they're doing. I was the easy target, right? The outsider, the black woman with too much confidence. Who's going to believe me over some executive who's been here for 10 years? Victor didn't flinch, but he didn't disagree either. The silence stretched too long. Elena's nails dug into her palms. Do you think I did this? Victor held her gaze. No. The breath she had been holding finally released. But the board does. Elena swore under her breath and began pacing. She could feel the noose tightening. So what happens now? She asked, forcing the words out. Victor exhaled and rubbed a hand over his jaw. We find the real leak. Elena froze. We, not you, not me. We. For the first time since she walked in, the ice in her chest cracked. Victor stood and slipped his suit jacket back on. Lena's already running a trace on the email source. It was routed through an external server. Someone covered their tracks well. He met her eyes. We'll have to be smarter. Elena crossed her arms, leveling him with a look. And what if we don't find them in time? What if the board decides to cut me loose? Victor's jaw tightened. Then we make them regret it. Elena studied him. Victor Stone wasn't the kind of man who made promises, but for the first time, she believed him. Whoever had set her up was about to find out exactly what kind of fight they had just started. The truth unraveled faster than they expected. Elena and Lena worked through the night, combing through server logs, tracing digital breadcrumbs. Whoever had framed her had been careful, but not careful enough. The leak had been routed through a secondary account, one tied to Gavin Harris, a senior executive with 10 years at Stone Innovations and a spotless reputation. The kind of man who kept his hands clean while others did his dirty work. By morning, they had enough evidence to bury him. Elena stormed into the boardroom before they could summon her like a criminal. The air was thick with tension. Dozens of polished, powerful men in tailored suits stared her down like she was already gone. Victor sat at the head of the table, unreadable. Miss Carter, one of the board members, an older man with a thin-lipped smirk, gestured to the empty seat across from them. I assume you know why you're here. Elena didn't sit. She never planned to. I do, she said, her voice steady. And I assume you all know you're about to make a very expensive mistake. A flicker of amusement crossed Victor's face, but he didn't interfere. Miss Carter, the board member began, but she cut him off. I was an easy target, right? Elena said, pacing the room. The new hire, the outsider, the one you could pin this on and quietly sweep under the rug. She stopped and placed a thick folder on the table. Except you picked the wrong one. She slid the folder across to them. Silence stretched as they skimmed through the documents. Expressions shifted, first indifferent, then cautious, then something much closer to alarm. Gavin Harris sat 2 seats down. His face was losing color by the second. These, Elena continued, are traced emails, bank transfers, call logs with reporters, all of them linked to Harris. Not me. She crossed her arms. And before you ask, yes, our legal team already has copies. So does the press. If you're looking to talk about damage control, I'd start there. A murmur swept through the room. Harris shot to his feet. His voice was sharp, bordering on frantic. This is ridiculous! She's bluffing! Elena turned to Victor, lifting an eyebrow. Am I? Victor finally spoke. His voice was cold and clear, sharp as cut glass. No, she's not. The words hit like a blow. Harris's mouth snapped shut. Victor stood, adjusting his cufflinks. Effective immediately, Gavin Harris is terminated. Full legal action will be pursued. He let the weight of his words settle before scanning the room. And if anyone else in this company thinks they can play the same game, let this be your warning. The silence that followed was absolute. Elena didn't smile. She didn't need to. She had won. 2 weeks later, she stood beside Victor at Ethan's graduation. The boy beamed up at her from his wheelchair, holding his diploma like it was the greatest prize in the world. Told you I'd make it, he said, chest puffed out. Elena laughed, ruffling his hair. Never doubted it for a second. Victor watched them. His usual cool demeanor had softened. You did good, Carter, he said. She smirked. Damn right I did. Ethan glanced between them. Are you guys gonna hug or something? Victor sighed. Absolutely not. Elena rolled her eyes. God, no. Ethan just grinned. For the first time in a long time, Elena felt like she had built something real, something that mattered. And she wasn't done yet. Years later, Elena Carter sat in the executive office of Stone Innovations. Her name now engraved on the door, Vice President of Corporate Strategy. What had started as a job, a challenge, had become a mission. Under her leadership, the company expanded its ethical labor initiatives, launched mentorship programs, and built partnerships with minority-owned businesses across the city. A new community center bore the name Carter Stone Foundation, funding education and job opportunities for underserved youth. At its ribbon-cutting ceremony, Ethan, now a college freshman, stood beside her, grinning like the same kid who once got a free meal in a diner because someone believed in kindness. That was the kind of investment that always paid off.